Up, I'd like to invite Rebekah Wallace back for a presentation titled Verifier Tools.
Okay. Hi, so yes, I'm going to be talking about verifier tools. There have been some questions throughout about reviewing records, verifying records, and so I'm just going to go over what some of this is for people who are not familiar with the verifier tools. I will not be going in depth into the actual mechanics of verifying and all of the things that need to be considered. I do have a walkthrough how to verify an EDDMapS record on the training page of the tools and training section of EDDMapS, so you can go and view the PowerPoint that's there. So let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to be covering basically three things: the new review page, the triage system, and the verifier request features. The new review page is, there's couple different pieces to it. So when I get to that, you'll see what I'm talking about. We get a lot of questions about becoming a verifier, being a verifier, who the verifiers are. So just some quick answers to common questions we get. What do? They evaluate the records that enter EDDMapS for accuracy. That's the most basic way to say everything they do, is they're evaluating the records for accuracy. So how long does it take to review a record? That's a common concern from people who would be interested in being a verifier. And it depends on the information available in the record. You have more information, you have pictures, you have all this extra information that goes much beyond the bare minimum, and it can be pretty quick depending on the species and the area. Just the most basic information that could be provided, no images, it may take longer because you have to ask the reporter for some of that information and images. So it really just depends on kind of what's provided to the verifier. And so people ask, who are verifiers? Who can be a verifier? We generally say that it's someone who has training, education, or experience otherwise in the identification of whatever the target subject is. That can be anything from an individual species all the way up to a whole division like plants. And then they're also active in the pest, biocontrol, and or invasive species fields, and just in some capacity. So we work with people in SISMAs and CWMAs that are verifiers, and we work with state and federal agency, academia, all different kind of levels of people. So this is one of the new pages we have. The page itself isn't new, but there's a new feature on here I wanted to show you. So when a verifier comes to the review records page, this is where all the records, they have the parameters met that they can review. They are now going to see two new icons. So there's the eyeball with the slash through it icon, which it's a record with private coordinates. So we talked about private earlier. Some of our verifiers requested some more information beyond this front page so that they know as they're going through some additional information that is associated with each of the records. So we added this to the location field so you can see that the private coordinates exist, but they're not going to be made available to the public. And then we also added this kind of notification icon there. So that's going to let the verifiers know that there is something going on with that record. The three kind of broad things that could be going on would be there's a large area associated with that record. And so some people have accidentally submitted records with, say, tens of thousands of acres associated with them, and that might be a little bit interesting. Large location uncertainty. So there are some records coming in that have over 1,000, over 10,000, over 20,000 meters uncertainty associated with the coordinates, and some people may find that those records are not useful for the purpose. And then there's also conflicting information. So we do get some records in where you say, okay, it says it's not here, but it says there's 5 of them. So just to give you a general idea of what we're talking about here, for infested area, we said anything over 20 acres. Most people aren't reporting over 20 acres, and so this isn't going to show up on every single record. Gross area over 25 acres. Now, again, this is just notifying the verifiers of what's going on. It's not preventing these records from coming in. So some of our Western partners that have hundreds and hundreds of acres of, say, cheatgrass, the data is still going to be available. It's just if someone tries to report Kogon grass as 100 acres in Georgia, there's a number of things that will go on to notify the verifier that maybe pay attention to this a little bit more carefully. For the location uncertainty, we said over 100 meters. So that lets the verifier know that if they hover over the icon with the exclamation point, it'll tell them the parameters that caused that notification to be there. So for location uncertainty, it's over 100 meters. And then conflicting information, like I said before, if a record's marked as negative or eradicated, but there's abundance or a life status or some sort of phenology or life stage associated with it, that is cause for concern because you're saying that, again, it wasn't there, but it was an adult. So just some extra information so that nothing slips by the verifiers. The review form changes were rolled out a couple of months ago, but some of you may not have reviewed in a while, and so you'll look at it and go, oh, that's all new to me. The top part of the record, it stayed the same, so you still see the information associated with the record as well as the map. And the bottom part of the record may have changed a lot for some of you and just a little bit for others. This record review history and discussion section might be new to some of you. Any changes that happen to the record occur there. So if a status change happens, if something was requested, if there's any information associated with it that one verifier wants other verifiers to know, it'll show up in this section. The message for other verifiers, that's where you leave those comments. It's just putting it in the record review history and discussion section. It's not emailing anybody. These comments do not go to the reporter. They don't go to anybody associated with the record in that way. This is just to let other verifiers know something that may be going on with the record. The white icons there, that is to request information or basically do something that doesn't change the record in and of itself too much. So you can request images, you can request additional information, you can claim the record, which doesn't prevent anybody from reviewing it. It's just letting other verifiers know that, hey, I'm going to take responsibility for the record, and especially the communication with. There's also the defer option. So if someone reports a spring species in winter, you can say, I want to come back to this in spring and set a reminder for yourself. There's also the change subject and make record negative icons in yellow. So these options were previously under another field in the review and release and review and don't release forms. So we brought those out. That allows you to change that aspect of the record. So going from, say, spotted knapweed to Canada thistle without having to review the record at that time. It's the same for the make record negative. This allows you to, when you do select review and release or review and don't release, you can say, okay, we moved it from spotted knapweed to Canada thistle and we're this level of certainty, possible, credible, or verified. We also moved delete out of the review and don't release section. So that's its own button now. It asks you to confirm it. It asks you for information of why you're deleting the record, because that information is provided back to the reporter. And so if you notice that this is a test record, or if there's something else wrong with the record, you can delete it and let them know why you're deleting it. I mentioned the triage system last year. I just wanted to go over it again because I am talking about things relating to verifying. So this triage system allows a lot of data to come in and be put in an area where the verifiers can look at it at a very large level and say, okay, here's what I want to say at a very large level. So in Florida, they may say, okay, we've got a lot of brown and nulls in Florida already. So if you look under that existing records column, there's already over 4,000 records of brown and null in Florida. So they may say, okay, we don't want to review 21,000 of these records. So maybe they say, okay, we're going to bulk verify it. Or maybe they say, brown and null, there's several other types of nulls in Florida. Maybe we want to review these to catch those instances where it was some other type of more concerning null. And so they may want those to go to verifiers, which 21,000 records is a lot to send to verifiers. I would not wish that on them. And then there's also the ignore option. So they may say that, okay, we know brown and nulls are in every crack and crevice in Florida. We don't necessarily need 21,000 more records of brown and null. It's not a priority. It's not going to affect any sort of change or anything like that. So maybe they don't want those to go in. So they might ignore this data set right there. As you notice, all of these reporters are iNaturalist. We are pulling data from iNaturalist. We are not pulling every piece of information that might be associated with a record. You can, in iNaturalist, create your own kind of user or project fields. We are not pulling data from those because those are not standardized. We are pulling basically any field that iNaturalist standardizes across its form, but not those user-defined fields. But we are providing a link back to the iNaturalist record so that if you need more information or anything that might be associated with the record that you might think not exist in our database specifically, you can go to the original record in iNaturalist and see that, okay, they took all these extra fields of data that, you know, are in whatever type of format. So you can see that, but we are hoping to incorporate data from other databases into this triage system so that we don't put it in the just regular upload initially. So if data comes from, say, the Forest Service or the Park Service, it can go in here instead of, you know, potentially sending hundreds or thousands of, you know, records to a particular individual all at once. We do get questioned, who is reviewing these records? Who are the verifiers? So if you go to the tools section of our tools and training tab and click on report verifier lookup under the database tools, you'll be taken to this screen where you can select a species and drop a point. And that allows you to see who's going to receive that notification, who's going to get the email that record came in. And so in this case, I didn't pick on Jerry this time. I dropped a point of Japanese knotweed in Wright County, Minnesota, and Monica and other people will be receiving that notification if that record comes in. This page also gives you a little bit more information. So it tells you if it's on a regulated species list, it tells you if it's been reported in that county or state before, it shows you the lists it's on and so forth. And so if you want to be a verifier, previously it was kind of word of mouth and emailing us, calling us saying, hey, you know, how can I participate? How can I help? We did add a online form for that. So you would click on My EDDMapS and then click on Request to be a Verifier, and it will take you to this form you're seeing here. So you would fill in the information on the form to the best of your abilities. It automatically fills in your current email address. So you can put in what qualifications you have, what your geographic scope would be, what your taxonomic scope would be, references who can say, yeah, that person knows what they're talking about. And any additional skills or comments you want to make will go in this form. So what happens next? So you submit the form, and what happens after that? The system admins may request more information. They're going to open up the information you provided, and we have at the bottom 3 options for contact, reject, and accept. So contact is asking for more information, and we will email you saying, hey, let's talk about this some more. Accept is for, yes, you're going to be a verifier. I'm going to put you in right now. And then reject is there's some barrier to you becoming a verifier that we couldn't resolve at that exact time. However, you can also recommend someone else to be a verifier. So if you work with someone in a SISMA, CWMA, or some other type of program or position, you can request that they be added as a verifier. So you would click over that requesting for another option, and it clears out that email field. So instead of it having your email address, you can put another email address in there. And then you would fill out the form, you know, to the best of your abilities of what you know about this person. So what their qualifications are, taxonomic scope, and so forth. It's the same form, just you're putting it in for someone else. And they get notified when you add them as a potential verifier, a requested verifier. It'll tell you, you know, who is proposed and who proposed it and what information you put in that form. And you do have the option, as you can see, about middle of the page, there's the decline option. If you want to not accept the invitation to be an EDDMapS verifier, there are a lot of busy people out there, we understand. We will notify the person who made the request and let them know that you declined the invitation. We will also say, okay, yeah, they're accepted as a verifier, and we're gonna start putting them in so they start getting emails. Or we will also let you know if they've been rejected for some reason, you know, again, based on the available information we have. So broadly, those are the questions, those are the tools associated with verifiers. We've gotten this question several times over the years about allowing unreviewed records to be available to the public. A long time ago, we did have that as a feature, and we just showed on the record, like, oh, if it's verified or not verified. That is not something we've been doing probably the last 10 years or so, because There have been times where people are testing or they are reporting something that's very high profile. So if someone reported, Asian giant hornet in Georgia, which they were when the news came out, we didn't want a bunch of points to show up on the map saying that there were these reports of Asian giant hornet all across Georgia and Kansas and Ontario, and they were being reported everywhere. So we don't want those to necessarily be out there in the public until someone has reviewed that, because those maps, that data is being shared to basically anyone who wants to request data or use the maps on our website. So just wanted to address that as a question we do get at times. So I think I have, do I have time? No, I ran into Chuck's talk. I am sorry. I'll answer the questions that come up in the question and answer box, and then we also have time at the end for additional questions.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Rebekah. Okay, let's invite